Okay, hello everyone. First impressions today on a palette I feel like I haven't seen very many people talk about, but you guys know how much I love ShinebySD. It was very much an impulse buy. It was around Christmas time. I was not in an overly positive headspace, so I just ended up deciding last minute to buy the Vintage Love palette from ShinebySD. Now, it's an all shimmer palette. There are different finishes in here. So expensive, truly like the price of a Pat McGrath palette. So yeah, it's a lot. But I mean, the spiel is, you know, multi-chromes, blah, 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 are expensive. It's a palette of all multi-chromes or like special shades, with the exception of this blue shade, which I'll get into. Anyway, so I have done eye swatches already actually, and live swatches. So I will, well, not live swatches, but like up close swatches, but let's live swatch this palette anyway. Let's get all the angles of it. I will say when I first got this, it smelled really, really strongly of like rubbing alcohol, like just a strong alcohol smell. I can smell it if I like really sniff it, but I left it open for a little bit and the smell is gone. Honestly, it's not like whatever, not ideal, but I'm not super bothered by it because there are definitely worse smells that could come out of a palette than like an alcohol, like sanitized smell. I don't know if that's like from wiping it or sanitizing it, or just like, do you use alcohol to press shadows? I don't know. I'm not a presser. I'm not a repanner. Oh, also, look at that. I sniffed it and I got shadow all over my nose. That's so funny. Oops. Thank God I noticed it. That really could have just been like there the whole video and I would have been unimpressed with myself. Okay, anyway. But it's basically gone. You have to like really dig your nose in to see. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna move over a little bit. It's a 12 pan palette. So, you know, not huge, and I think it's a good size because, you know, you can't really have it much larger or it's gonna be like even more expensive. Anyway, the first shade is the shade Antique. This is kind of like a bronzy pink green. I will in my eye swatches give like the actual shade descriptions that ShinebySD has on their website. This I know is a multi-chrome. It's really, really beautiful, kind of like a grungy one. And one I think that's pretty unique. Then we have the shade Infatuation. This is also a multi-chrome. It's a dark purple, has like a black base with pink and green shifts. Then we have a Historic. This is not a shifty shade. It's just a really, really shimmery shade. It's like a warm bronze with a ton of gold sparkle. Even though it's not shifty, I think it's really pretty. Next up, we have the shade Cherish. This is also a multi-chrome. It's a little bit sheerer than the first two that I've swatched. It's like purple, blue, pink. It has like a teal shift to it. Really, really pretty. Then we have the shade Old Time, which is one of my favorites. I think I'm going to use this in my eye look today. Also multi-chrome. Kind of has like a sheer black base, but it's like a green to purple to blue. Then we have the shade Valuable. This also is not a multi-chrome. I believe it's described as a duochrome, like a purple pink duochrome. Not quite as sparkly, but I really like the shade of it. It's kind of like a periwinkle blue purple pink shade. Then we have the shade Dated. This is like an iridescent multi-chrome. It's described as an iridescent multi-chrome, although to me this is kind of more like a duochrome. It has a very like sheared, like translucent base with a blue and pink shift. I might use this as my face highlight today actually. Then we have the shade Tenderness. This is a gorgeous like orange coral. I believe is described as a multi-chrome as well, and it's described as having like yellow and gold shifts, but to me it's kind of like an orange coral with like a pink base and like gold yellow shifts. Then we have the shade Outdated, which I believe is described as a jeweled multi-chrome, and it's, I believe, described as like a gold and silver multi-chrome, like kind of like, yeah, like a gold, yellow, silver multi-chrome, but I feel like there's like a pinkiness to it. There's like a greeny blueness to it. It's very unique, very sparkly, really, really pretty. Then we have the shade Vintage. This is just described as a blue shimmer, but to me this is just like a blue satin. I am not in love with this shade. I wish that it wasn't in here, to be honest, especially compared with a lot of the other shades in here. It feels very like meh. But I guess if you like satins, then that might be a shade you like. Then we have the shade Devotion. This is also very unique. It's supposed to have like a brown kind of base, but there's like a burgundy, like redness to it. There's green and blue and pink sparkle. I think it's really beautiful and a like really nice neutral kind of shimmery shifty shade. And then the last shade is the shade Ancient, which is so pretty. It's like a burgundy green, has again kind of like a deeper, almost black base. Burgundy green, purple, gold, really, really beautiful. So this is the palette just, you know, kind of live swatched. I like that there's an array of finishes. I like that there is a lot of different colors. I think it's just a really, really nice collection of sparkly, shifty shades that kind of showcases like what ShinebySD does in a lot of ways, because you have different finishes, different shades, you know, you really get a variety. So now I'm going to show live swatches and the eye swatches, or not live swatches, but up close swatches, and then we will get into a little eye look. But I'm going to do my just kind of like matte shades off camera, and then we'll just quickly do a little show and tell of some of the shades in the palette. Okay, hello. I wasn't expecting to do this now, but I'm just going to do some of the eye swatches for the Vintage Love palette from ShinebySD. I might have to jump into a different day for this, but we're gonna get as far as time and or my camera battery allows. Yeah, basically if you haven't watched first impressions from me or an eye swatching portion of a video from me, I always prime my eyes with the NARS smudge proof eyeshadow base before I do my swatches. This is just a mini guy, but it's just my favorite eyeshadow primer. It doesn't have any pigment and it's not overly tacky, but I just find that it provides a really, really nice base for eyeshadow. So that's what I'm going to do in between each swatch. And because this is a palette of shimmers, I will say I typically I go in with the shadows dry and then wet with the wet brush and then with my finger. These are a little bit more like flaky and shimmery, so we're gonna see how that goes, but I do prefer to do this rather than using like a glitter primer or something because, I don't know, like most people are gonna have a brush, water, and their fingers, you know? So this is just kind of like, rather than adding any additional products in, kind of like what you're gonna get with the shadows kind of thing. So yeah, I'm just gonna start. The first shade in the palette is the shade Antique. So I'm gonna start with this dry, like I said. Okay, so that is this dry. It looks so beautiful. By the way, maybe I'll just, ShinebySD describes this as being a multi-chrome with a forest green with olive green and gold shifts, which I would say is very accurate. It almost looks grayish on the eyes. Let me intensify this first though before I go any further. I'm gonna wet my brush now. This is honestly just water. That's what I use to spray my brushes, so. And then intensify it with my finger. This is definitely quite smooth when compared to a lot of ShinebySD shades. Definitely still sparkly though, don't get me wrong. It's just not like super, super flaky, which could be a good thing for some people. Facing the like a light source, it looks almost like very olivey with like almost a pinky like shift to it as well. And then from the side you can definitely see the like brighter kind of green going on, like almost like an emerald green. I'm sure you'll be able to see that as well in like the different lighting, but such a beautiful, beautiful shade. Oh my goodness. And then the next shade in the palette is the shade Infatuation, which is a purple. This is also described as a multi-chrome with a deep royal purple with a pink and gold shift. Might be helpful if I describe it right away. I don't know. Okay, so starting with this dry as well. Okay, now I'm gonna wet this. And then intensify it with my finger. Again, similarly, not very flaky, very smooth, a little bit less sparkly than the first shade, Antique, and maybe a little bit less shifty. A pink and gold shift, you can definitely see both of those. It's just not super, it's a little bit more subtle. But I mean, purple and pink and gold, it's not going to be like as intense, but it's even compared to Antique, it's not quite as intense. Still really pretty though. My least favorite thing ever happened where I filmed, or I thought I filmed, and I didn't press record. So we're going to again eye swatch the shade Historic. I could cry, but I won't. Okay, so this is described as a sparkly metallic shimmer. It's a bronze gold with golden sparkle. Let's ignore the note of resentment in my voice. Okay, so starting with this dry. Okay, so you can see it's much more textured than the first two. Now I'm going to wet this. And intensify this with my finger. So yeah, it's just a really warm, like orangey bronze with a ton of gold sparkle. It's so sparkly and so pretty. And I don't know what it is about this shadow, but there is also the way like the sparkle is, it looks like it has a blue sparkle to it as well, and like dimmer light. I don't know, that's I don't know why that is, if that's intentional, but that's what it looks like as well. So pretty. Probably one of my favorite shades in the palette, honestly. And then the next shade up is the shade Cherish. This is also described as a multi-chrome, and it's described as a soft lavender purple with a light pink and blue shift. So starting with this dry. So again, it's almost a little bit different to the Antique and Infatuation shade that I've already swatched. And I'm just going to wet my brush. In that it is not quite obviously as textured as this shade Historic here, but it's a little bit sheerer, a little bit more sparkly, but it's just so beautiful. And then taking that on my finger, So obviously straight on, you can see it definitely shows up as a lavender kind of purple. You can see the pink shift, pink sparkle to it, also the blue, and then in some lights as well, it has like a teal shift. I don't know whether that's just like the blue pigment that shows up that way, but there's like a distinct teal shift as well, and I love purples that shift to teal. It's so, so pretty. So this is Historic and Cherish. Okay, next up is the shade Old Time, which is so, so pretty. This is also multi-chrome. It's described as being a teal green with a blue and purple shift. And honestly, I can see the shift in this just from it like sitting on my desk. So it's so, so shifty. It appears very shifty anyway. Okay, so starting with this dry. Now I'm gonna wet this. And intensify it with my finger. This is similar to Antique and Infatuation in that, again, sparkly but a little bit smoother, not super, super flaky, very opaque, and it's kind of like that beetle type multi-chrome with like a green with a purple shift, and I think it also, yeah, a blue and purple shift. I think the purple is a little bit more obvious, but you can see the blue as well. It's kind of just one of those like more specific lighting shifts, if you know what I mean. But the purple and the green is really, really obvious. Next up is the shade Valuable. This is a sparkly duochrome. It's described as being a frosty purple with light pink sparkle. So like a pink purple duochrome. Okay, so going in with this dry. Okay, now I'm going to wet my brush. And take this on my finger. This is almost like a periwinkle purple, like a very blue toned purple. And again, like obviously it's not like super shifty. You can see the pink sparkle in it for sure. Really pretty, a little bit more flaky, not quite as smooth as like Old Time, for example. But okay, so next up is the shade Dated. This is a iridescent multi-chrome that says it's an iridescent pink with blue. An iridescent pink with blue shift and sparkles. So not quite a multi-chrome. I don't also really see this as a multi-chrome. This is more of like an iridescent duochrome in my humble opinion, but that's just me. Okay, that's it dry. Now I'm going to wet my brush. And then my finger. So definitely, in my opinion, has like a true sheer base, like a true, what what's the word, translucent base. Like you really doesn't have like much of a base pigment at all. And then it's like blue and purple, or blue and pink shifting. I think it's really pretty, but I don't see anything like multi-chrome about it necessarily. Next up is the shade Tenderness. This is also described as a multi-chrome. They describe it as being a vibrant orange with a yellow and gold shift. I'm very excited about this shade. Okay, so going in with this dry. Going in with a wet brush, which you can see definitely makes it more opaque. And then intensifying this with my finger. So it's almost similar to Valuable in the sense that it's like, it's sparkly, but it's not like super sparkly. Definitely nowhere near like the level of Historic, say. And it's a little bit sheerer, similar to Cherish, that you have to build it up, but you can get it to like a pretty good opacity. It's a beautiful like corally orange with yellow and gold. I mean, I don't really know the difference between yellow and gold shifts, but you can see like a yellow gold shift, and to me it does show up kind of like pink as well, kind of like in its, like when you're not in direct lighting. I think because this orange is like kind of like a corally orange, it has like a pinkiness to it, but you can definitely see like a pink almost base when it's not directly hitting the light. It's really, really beautiful. Okay, now we have the shade Outdated. This is described as a jeweled / metallic multi-chrome. It's a gold metallic with a yellow, gold, and muted silver shift. But I think that there's a lot more to it than that, to be honest. So I'm going to start with this dry. See, wow, that's really opaque and really sparkly. Wetting my brush. And my finger. So really sparkly, really opaque, like one of the more opaque and sparkly shades, to be honest. Definitely a gold with a yellow, gold, and silver shift. I would say that's very accurate. Very like yellow. But there is like a greeniness to this as well. And there's like a pink sparkle that comes through in lower light. So I think that this has like a ton of dimension. And it's definitely like more than is described and meets the eye, I would say. Next up we have the shade Vintage. And this is described as a shimmer. It's just a bright blue shimmer. This doesn't really excite me, if I'm gonna be honest. It's not very sparkly or shiny, to be honest. It feels more like a satin to me. So this is a dry. So yeah, you can see not even a ton of like sheen to it. I'm gonna spray my brush as well, just to kind of see what it looks like when it's wet. So it deepens a little bit. It gets a little bit more sheeny, I would say. And then I'll intensify this with my finger. But yeah, I would say this is probably the most that you're going to get out of the shade. Honestly, it's a nice shade. But yeah, it's definitely more of like a blue satin shade to me. Okay, and then the last two shades, we have Devotion, which is so beautiful. This is described as a multi-chrome, an orange brown with a light teal blue-green shift and sparkles. This is really, really beautiful. Again, one of my favorites. So, going in with a dry. Going in with a wet brush. And my finger. It's described as a orange brown, but I feel like, okay, there's almost like a brownie base to it, but there's like, also has like a burgundy, I want to say, ness. Like it looks very burgundy in the pan, and then you definitely have like a blue teal shift, really sparkly, very similar to Cherish, I want to say, in like texture, sparkly, but not super like textured and chunky. Really, really pretty though. I really like this. And then the last shade in the palette is the shade Ancient. This is also a multi-chrome. It's described as a deep burgundy purple with a gold shift. Going in with a wet brush. This feels similar to Old Time in that it's sparkly, a little bit smoother, a little bit deeper, almost like it has like a black, like a black base, but like a sheer black base, like a gray base almost. And opaque. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely giving like black base multi-chrome vibes. Obviously very strong like burgundy purple shift. You can see the gold shift, but it has like almost like an orangey shift to it. And with that gold shift, I think there's like a green as well, like a kind of emeraldy green. Really, really, really pretty. And these are the last two shades in the palette, concluding the eye swatch portion of the video. Okay, so I just did some matte shadows in my eyes, on my eyes. If you're wondering, I'll put it in the description box as well, but I used the Blend Bunny Dollhouse palette and just this row, so the shades Hold Me, No Strings, and Cinched. Just these three mattes in my crease and on my lower lash line. So I'm gonna use as many shades as I can. Oh, and I use the shade Dated as a highlight. It's really pretty. I normally don't love using shadows as highlight, but I really like it. And it really doesn't have any base to it. So honestly, I think similar to the Blend Bunny highlight formula, actually, like this would pretty much work for every single skin tone because it really has like a true like transparent base. So my plan, I think, today is to use these shades Old Time and Cherish on my lid. I'm going to use Dated in my inner corner. I might use one of these shades, like maybe the shade Valuable, my lower lash line. And then I might use a little bit of Infatuation on my outer corner. We're just going to kind of see. But obviously I'm going for something purpley. I felt like there was a lot of like purpley tones in here. and I felt like they could create a cohesive little look. First, I'm going to take some NYX glitter primer and put this all over my lid. In my eye swatches, I used the shadows dry with a wet brush, so now I'm going to use glitter primer. This is how I typically use all of my like shimmers anyway, so you kind of get to see the shades in all facets, kind of how they perform in all the ways. So I'm going to start with the shade Old Time, which is that kind of green purple shade. I'm going to put this in the center of my lid. So pretty. This is like one of those like beetle kind of multi-chromes, like a green, purple. So beautiful. Then I'm just going to wipe my brush off a little bit, but I'm going to just use the same one and take the shade Cherish and put this in the front part of my eye. Interesting. Definitely shows up like very pinky when paired with these shadows. And then I'm just going to layer that a little bit over Old Time as well. And just go back and forth between Old Time and Cherish just to blend them together. This outer corner is patchy. Just ignore it, okay? Because it's not part of the video and I'm going to cover it in black eyeshadow anyway, so we'll just move past it. But I'm going to take Old Time and Cherish on my fingers and intensify these shades on my lid. I cannot stop pairing purple and green together. Like, I cannot stop. And then for my lower lash line, I'm going to take the shade Valuable, which is this duochrome. This purple pink duochrome. Just put it on the inner part of my lower lash line, just with my pinky. And then I'm going to take Dated, which is this like iridescent shade that I have also in my cheekbones. I'm going to put this in my inner corners. I'm going to give this a little spray just so it sticks a bit better. And I'm also going to put this on my brow bone as well. It is a little, like, it's quite dry, so sometimes you need to layer it a little bit to stick, but that's just kind of the way these top ray shadows can be. So I'm quickly just going to put a matte black in my outer corner. I'm just going to use the matte black in the Blend Money palette. Okay, so now I'm going to take the shade Infatuation on my finger. This is the dark purple. And tap this over the matte black in my outer corner. I always get a little bit carried away with this, so I'm going to try to be careful. And then I will, why not, put this also on my lower lash line. I mean, it's not going to do a ton because obviously it's over a black, so, you know, it's going to be deep. But I don't know. This is something that I've really been enjoying doing recently. And I feel like it, you know, it's just an extra bit of shimmer. And if I can add it, why not? So that's, I feel like I've pretty much used up the entire space of my lids to, you know, play with shadow. So this is where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to finish up my face, do my hair, and then show you the finished look and my thoughts on this palette. Okay, and this is the finished look. On my lips, I have the Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil in Endless Cacao and the Maybelline Powder Matte Lipstick in the shade Carnival Brown. I'm not sure if you can get this anymore. Added to the collection. I feel like 80% of my lip products are not, like, discontinued, not available, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. My thoughts on this palette. I feel like, okay, so first of all, just talking about the shades, I really like the selection of shades. Again, as I stated before, I think there's a lot of variety in shades, in finishes, in shifts, and you know, you kind of get the whole span of what Shine by SD does. So that I really appreciate. The only shade that I don't love, like I've stated before, is the shade Vintage. I'm not a huge fan of satins. I don't personally find like a ton of use for them, just in terms of like my makeup preferences and all that kind of stuff. But that's obviously a personal, you know, preference thing, so that's going to, you know, be very individual on how you feel about that. Obviously this is a really expensive palette, and while I do love Shine by SD so much, I mean, it's going to be, again, very individual in terms of whether or not this is like quote unquote worth it. I don't really think I can determine that for anyone. It's going to be, you know, based on your budget, based on, you know, what you feel you're willing to spend on whatever. I think though that if you were, this palette would be a good buy if you wanted to try Shine by SD, if you get decision fatigue like me, because there's so many, you know, options and collections, and it can be really difficult to like narrow it down, decide what you want kind of thing. And if you want like a pre-selected range of shades that have different finishes, different colors, this I think would be a really good option. Like, I think if you buy 12 multi-chromes or like 12 shadows just off of Shine by SD's website, you're gonna probably have a dollar amount that's like in the range of what this palette costs anyway. So if you prefer palettes, if you find you don't reach for single shadows, you don't like single shadows, you know, that kind of thing, this palette could be a really good option for you. If you already have like a really huge single shadow collection, or you prefer singles or all that kind of stuff, you want to like choose specifically what multi-chromes, what shades you want yourself, obviously this palette may not be the best buy. As someone who loves Shine by SD, I do have a code with them. It's an affiliate code, but I don't think I've ever made money off of it. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who's ever used it. Anyway, it's Laura Clark Makeup for 10% off. It's kind of like tricky. It doesn't always work on everything, but you can always try it. You know, why not? Give it a shot. If you feel so inclined. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the palette. I really like it. Like, if you wanted to know how I feel about it, I think it's a great palette. I'm so excited to have it. I'm so excited to use it. I think I'm going to do a 3 looks 1 palette with this. Obviously pairing it with some other stuff, but just to kind of like showcase it more kind of thing. Yeah, hopefully this video was helpful. And those are, yeah, my general thoughts. I think it's ultimately going to be like really determined. It's going to be just based on you, your personal preference and budget. I just hope that this video was helpful in terms of showing the shades, showing kind of what you get, what this palette's all about. Yeah, hopefully this video was enjoyable or helpful. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I would love to see you in my next video. Bye, guys.